Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome back to A Numbers Game with Ryan Girdusky. Thank you guys for being here. We have a very exciting episode today. Chad Bianco, candidate for governor of California, is here. It's going to be a very exciting conversation. He's really in the mix of things for this election, and you never know what can happen. So he'll talk about policies. He'll talk about the election. He'll talk about why he's feuding with fellow Republican Steve Hilton, what he thinks of some of the Democrats, and what his hopes are for California. So that's coming up later. But first, let's talk about data centers. It's a big topic of conversation. Last week on his podcast, Tucker Carlson had on Kevin O'Leary, a Canadian billionaire from Shark Tank, trying to build the largest data center in the country in Box Elder, Utah. It is a 62 square mile data center site that is twice the size of the island of Manhattan. The facility will be a 9 gigawatt, will require about 9 gigawatts of power, which is more than the entire state of Utah currently consumes, and suck up a significant amount of water in the area, which has had severe droughts in many recent years. Residents of Utah are not happy about this data center being created. Thousands of people have protested, and Kevin O'Leary both can't understand the outrage and is not happy about it. And Kevin O'Leary thinks he knows who's really responsible: the Chinese.
I got a phone call from one of the people that watches our network, looks for abnormalities. And he said, there's something going on here, something very unusual on Instagram and on Twitter, which is now X. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the spiking of a bunch of IP addresses that we don't know. And it's spewing out a tremendous amount of information. I said, okay, guys, let's get our team on, because I'm very fortunate. I have a bunch of very good data scientists, investigative data scientists, if you want to call them that. Probably one of the best teams privately outside of the government in the Department of Defense. My team's pretty good. You can make the assumption they once worked in these agencies. All right, let me give you some names here, Tucker. Party for Socialism and Liberation apparently shares offices with the CPP all over my social media.
That ended up not being true. It was two left-wing girls from Utah who work in local Democratic politics that were really behind the push. They've made videos afterwards, basically showing their identity and who they are. It's kind of crazy for Kevin O'Leary to casually admit that he's doing deep IP searches to unmask Americans who are criticizing you, because on Fox News appearances afterwards, he names the women by name and he asks them who's paying them. It's a little aggressive and a little strange. But Kevin has a lot on the line. Not only is this massive investment from other businessmen to build this data center, he talks about having to borrow billions and billions of dollars. He's also receiving a tax incentive from the state government to build this project. Now, O'Leary has a long history of criticizing government and subsidies, but he doesn't mind it when it comes to his business. He's going to receive a reduced energy tax cut, cutting about 0.5% from his energy taxes, and an agreement to rebate 80% of the property tax revenue back to O'Leary Digital. Tucker did bring up a very fair point. When the richest companies on earth are the ones using these data centers, why are middle-class taxpayers forced to subsidize it?
Let me ask, though, about why taxpayers should have to pay for this if it's a private business and your tenants are some of the richest companies in the world. Why would taxpayers be required, as they now are, to subsidize this?
They don't necessarily have to do that. They just won't win any contracts. It's a competition.
But why are you getting tax breaks is my question.
Yeah, everybody, you go back and you say, what incentives can you give us to invest $15 billion in the first 1.5 gigs? That's what it takes. I have to go raise $15 billion.
Well,
that's just
okay, but anyone who starts a business, why should taxpayers have to pony up for that?
They don't. But
well, of course they do. If you're getting a tax break and they're not, they're making up the difference. There's a state budget.
Hey, that's no problem. That's no problem. I can build it in Texas. I can build it in Jacksonville, Mississippi.
But why, if it's such a good business, would you be asking taxpayers to help pay for it without giving them equity in the company? Are you giving taxpayers shares?
No, the investors get the shares, but here's why they would do it.
But why would the taxpayers have to? I mean, in other words, if you want to start a business, but why am I, as a taxpayer, forced to pay for your business? I don't get it.
Well, let's forget about data centers. Let's go any manufacturing.
Now, obviously, data centers aren't the only business that receive tax breaks, but they do what Kevin O'Leary is saying. What they're doing, what Kevin O'Leary is saying, if you don't give me them, someone else will. So you need to give me tax breaks. It is a race to the cheapest market possible, and with all the incentives and what state will oblige with them. This is crony capitalism. This puts the state is giving tax breaks oftentimes to very large companies like these data center companies, and then those large companies later on down the road, which is not happening yet, but I guarantee we're going to see it, push for certain regulations to weed out smaller competitions who don't receive those tax breaks to begin with, and when they fail, those same companies demand bailouts from taxpayers. Kevin O'Leary, that's the history of crony capitalism right there. Kevin O'Leary waxes poetic about the beauty of the free market, that he is a spokesperson for the American dream and the free market, and the chaos and the production and the innovation that all come from the free market. Yet he himself is not living through nature of that system because he himself is state subsidized.
Every time technology advances, it creates new opportunities that were not foreseen prior because you don't know the direction of new tech. Think about if you and I, because we were actually around in the late 80s contemplating what new jobs would be created by the internet. And look at what's happened. It's created millions of jobs and advanced all kinds of technologies and changed the way we live to the better. And I would say to you, the same angst we had, the same narrative that was going on in 1992 about how the internet is going to wipe out the economy and it's a bad thing and it's dangerous. Of course, people loathe change. That's the nature of how it is.
But what Kevin is saying doesn't sound like the fear of the internet being created. It sounds like the promises when China was made a member of the World Trade Organization and given most favored trading status by the United States. The same thing that led to China's rise that Kevin O'Leary is so worried about, and sold out millions of American jobs and sold out so many and destroyed so many people's lives. It was sold to the American public as having all upsides, no downsides. China would be democratic eventually, and our products in America would be very cheap. And we could then sell products made in America to the Chinese market with by American made workers. I mean, it was going to be all victories. We were going to have access to China's market. It would be democratic. Everything was going to go right. It was even described as a one-way street victory.
The WTO agreement will move China in the right direction. It will advance the goals America has worked for in China for the past 3 decades. And of course, it will advance our own economic interests. Economically, this agreement is the equivalent of a one-way street. It requires China to open its markets with a fifth of the world's population, potentially the biggest markets in the world, to both our products and services in unprecedented new ways. All we do is to agree to maintain the present access which China enjoys. Chinese tariffs from telecommunications products to automobiles to agriculture will fall by half or more over just 5 years. For the first time, our companies will be able to sell and distribute products in China made by workers here in America without being forced to relocate manufacturing to China, sell through the Chinese government, or transfer valuable technology. For the first time, we'll be able to export products without exporting jobs.
Of course, none of that happened. Americans weren't able to freely trade with China. Millions of jobs were lost, and worse, millions of more people died of deaths of despair when their jobs left, when their factories left, when their towns turned upside down, when communities throughout the entire Rust Belt basically died off of, and it was all done off of the false promises made by politicians about China entering the WTO. That's what these promises around AI and data centers sound like coming from people like Kevin O'Leary. Not the promise of the internet, which was really a bit of chaotic destruction, although the internet was created by the government. Only these consequences around AI are much larger than just China entering the WTO. Now, I'm not saying that there will be no upsides from the AI revolution. It's obviously a very useful tool to make us more prosperous, to make us more efficient. There's a lot of benefits that we can already see through AI, but there will be downsides. And there's just no way, because there's always downsides. And they're not being honest about that. O'Leary even admits the technology will create job loss and will be used. He says this in the Tucker interview. He will be used to spy on Americans at an even greater capacity than we're already being spied on. There's also worry about data centers being bad for the local environment. They're extremely noisy. They use tons of energy, obviously, tons of electricity. There is a concern over water, although it's a little bit overblown. But in areas that have constant droughts, it's not that overblown to just talk about why we're using so much water in dry, arid places in the mountains or the desert. That's a reasonable concern to have if you're a person living in the local community. It's not because you're just getting talking points from China. Any criticism or worries you may have over data centers and the future of AI putting people out of work or spying on Americans or becoming super intelligent and eventually turning on humans is all met with the same response from O'Leary. And he says it over and over. He says, we have to beat China. We have to beat China. We have to beat China. I agree. I don't like that China is our sole adversarial global superpower. I actually hate it. And I hate the mindset that created it, which was the neoliberal mindset. The neoliberal mindset, which said, if we do this, China will react this way. If we do that, China will react this way. We need to give them the WTO. We need to give them most favored trading partner status. We need to allow them to cover up for the COVID-19 virus. Remember all those people who sold us those ideas, who censored us. It's the same exact mindset right now around AI and beating China. It was big tech. It was the data center people. It was the AI companies. It was the social media companies as well that censored criticism of how the COVID virus, which fundamentally ruined so many people's lives. Maybe they didn't die from it, but they certainly lost 2 years of their life. If they were young, if they were old, they missed time with their family, they lost a lot of jobs. Our economy really never came back from it in a certain capacity. I mean, yes, we've had new jobs, but the amount of money put into the system has led to the inflation crisis in large part. And there was no backlash. There was no conversation allowed to have a backlash. And if you had a problem with China, or you believed that the COVID-19 virus came from China, from a lab, or you criticized a lot of what the government did, it was the big tech companies and the AI companies that say that now they're going to be responsible to China that criticized and that censored you. And here's the thing. If defeating China is the most important threat in the world, why are we still trading with them? Why are we still selling them chips? Why are American-made companies that have benefited from American tax dollars that created the internet and research and development for technology for companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple, and the American military, which protects the seaways and Taiwan that builds so many of these chips? Why are we allowing them to work with them? If it's the most important thing, if we American taxpayers and the American military are making all these immense sacrifices towards research and development, the creation of the internet, the protecting of our neighborhoods, protecting of our allies, the ability to sell this, abroad, why are we letting these companies, these American companies, do business with them? If China is such a big threat that Kevin O'Leary says we have to fundamentally change everything about our economy to beat them in this, that they present a universal danger to us, why are we still selling them farmland? Why are we still educating their kids? And why on earth did President Trump say this?
I would assume I'm in Beijing. If I wanted to buy property near one of their military installations, I don't think President Xi...
No, they wouldn't let you. I don't... Look, it's not that I love it. You want to see farm prices drop? You want to see farmers lose a lot of money? Just take that out of the market. But they've had a lot of land for a long time. Obama did nothing about it. They bought a lot of it during the Obama administration. He did nothing about it. As far as the students, it's 500,000 students they come, good students. I could tell them, I don't want any students, is a very insulting thing to say to a country. They would then immediately go out and start building universities all over China. But if you don't have those students, good students, by the way, if you don't, and we do another thing, if they're good and they want to stay in America, we won't give them a green card and things like that. And that, not only them, but other countries. But if you want to see a university system die, take 500,000 people out of it. And the ones that won't be hurt are the top schools. The top schools will do fine, but your lower schools, the ones that don't do quite as well, they'll be dying all over the place. I frankly think that it's good that people come from other countries and they learn our culture, and many of them want to stay here. I think it's good. Not everybody agrees with me.
He says we need to allow China to buy our farmland and send their elite kids to our colleges, because if we don't, we'll be hurt by it too much. Now, frankly, I do not care what happens to the indoctrination mills of colleges that teach kids to hate this country. I don't believe a thing he said when it comes to China in relation to why we need them for farming. I frankly don't believe that at all. But that does not sound like a man who believes China is an existential threat, that we need to risk our whole future, go blindly towards developing AI, blindly towards data centers, without doing any investigation into health risks or job risks or the risk of humanity. Because the truth is, big tech doesn't want you to learn that this whole idea that we're in this together to beat China is utter bullshit. And I don't curse on this podcast, but it's utter bullshit. There's no other way to say it, though. They're getting the tax cuts, and they're censoring conservatives, and they're making billions of dollars from data centers, and they're employing H-1B workers to replace Americans. Yes, it's creating some high-paying jobs, especially in construction industry, but those are all temporary. The average data center, especially a new data center, will create some dozen permanent jobs. But I think we all know who the big winner of this game is. And if Americans become vastly unemployable and unemployed because of these data centers, how much are these AI companies and these data companies willing to then redistribute or hire Americans just for the sake of giving them a purpose to wake up in the morning? Are they going to do any of that sacrifice, or do the middle class have to do all the sacrifice and they reap all the benefits? And all this heavy breathing about China has done nothing to convince people to want data centers in their area. In fact, it's one of the biggest revolts we've seen in the public in decades, and it's completely bipartisan. A new Gallup poll found that 71% of Americans oppose the building of a data center in their area. 48% strongly oppose, while only 7% strongly favor. Broken down by party, 77% of Democrats, 74% of independents, and 63% of Republicans do not want data centers in their area, while only 23% of Democrats, 24% of independents, and 34% of Republicans support them being built in the area. People, and this is actually a true fact and statistic according to Gallup, people would rather live near a nuclear facility than a data center, according to the Gallup poll. Now, think of how many decades of propaganda against nuclear facilities have existed. I mean, crazy amount of decades of it, even though countries like France have managed to work their entire electric grid over nuclear energy and it's perfectly safe. That is more favorable, despite constant negative attention for decades, than data centers. And this backlash to data centers is having a real impact. The number of data centers construction being canceled hit an all-time high last quarter. In Q1 2024, no construction had been canceled. In Q2, it was 4 sites. In Q3, it was 11. In Q4, it was 12. In Q1 of 2026, it was 20. And this backlash is happening everywhere. West Virginia, Georgia, Kansas, Illinois, Minnesota, Alabama, Missouri, Virginia, Washington, Texas, Pennsylvania, everywhere. It's not a blue state thing. It's not a red state thing. It's not a purple thing. It's a thing. I'm going to do an entire episode on Wednesday breaking down the myths and the spin and the common misconception behind data centers as best as I can. So check that out for Wednesday. But I really want to bring in you all the information as best as possible because, one, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but there's a lot of people selling utter dreams and nonsense for their own benefit and saying that we're all in this together when they clearly do not mean it. All right. In the meantime, we do have a governor's election in California coming up on June 2nd, and Sheriff Chad Bianco, one of the leading candidates for governor, is on the podcast with us. That's coming up next. Stay tuned. Chad Bianco is the sheriff of Riverside County, California. That's the county east of Los Angeles for those who are not Californians. It is residents to about 2.5 million inhabitants. He is running for governor of the state. The primary is on June 2nd. Sheriff, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So I want to start with some basics for those who don't know you. You've been sheriff of Riverside since 2019. What are some experiences in that role that have taught you something that you could apply to being governor of California?
Well, it's actually, I'm the only person that you have available that has the experience and the past of dealing with a broken California government. I've been dealing with broken California policies since 2019, becoming sheriff, and I'm the only person that's been fighting them. I stood up to the ridiculous state mandates that Newsom put into play when it came to COVID. I was the first in the country to do that. I'm the first in the country to stand up for my residents. I was the first in the country to stand up to the riots and end them and eliminate them from my county that set the tone for the rest of the country. We are a law-abiding Riverside County. We have consequences for criminal behavior. We are the #1 county in California to lower homelessness because we approach it how it should be approached. There's a crime element to it, and then we get people into housing. We get people into care. We get people into drug and alcohol rehab. I'm the only person on that stage that is actually a doer instead of a talking head politician, career politician that they want to promise you pie in the sky ideas and here, vote for me, vote for me. None of them have actually done anything to make your life better. And I've spent 33 years doing it now, 8 as the sheriff of one of the largest sheriff's offices in the entire country.
Yeah, I watched a bit of one of the debates, and there was a lot going on. From Katie Porter needs to probably seek psychological help at some point in her life. I don't know when that will be, but there's going to be a moment where I think Katie Porter is going to need actual help. But the buzzword in this election cycle is affordability. It's the question a lot of people have in their mind, and for genuine reasons. Things are really expensive right now. On your website, it's biancoforgovernor.com. You address a number of those issues that I wanted to really run through. 3 being housing, energy, and insurance. Could you go into how you want to approach those 3 specific issues?
Yes, every single one of them have been destroyed in California because of excessive regulation and bad environmental policy. Housing is purposely being stopped. We cannot build housing in California. This whole notion of affordable housing is a buzzword to make you feel bad that it's ridiculous that government is causing it. And yet they tell you they want to be the problem. It is overregulation of our building industry, bureaucratic red tape, 3 to 5 years to build a home instead of 3 to 5 months. That's why builders don't build. We have a massive shortage of housing in California because environmentalists, the truth of the matter is environmentalists don't want us to build houses. That's why they have complete control over water. That's why they have complete control over electricity and building to make sure that you can't afford homes, to make sure that you can't afford rent. They want you living in an apartment complex in the middle of downtown Los Angeles, and they want you to walk to everything that you do. And that is not America. That is China. And we are America. And I am going to fight for every single Californian. So the regulation is destroying our housing industry. The regulation is destroying our affordability issue with cost of living because of the high price of gas, the high price of groceries, and all of the things that go along with it because of oil. We will be oil independent in this state. We will utilize our own oil. It's 5 times cheaper to do it here than to buy from other countries, and we can do it cleaner. We will make sure that our electric grid is not only upgraded, but we make it to a nuclear source of power that's more reliable, safer for the environment, and cheaper. And when I'm your governor, we are going to eliminate California state income tax. We are going to slash your electric rates minimum in half. It may even be closer to you will only be paying 1/3 of what you're currently paying. We will be the #1 business friendly environment in the country to attract businesses here and keep them here. We're going to stimulate the economy like it's supposed to be stimulated, how government is supposed to work instead of how government is supposed to oppress everything. When we realize that government policy and agenda in the state of California is the reason our life is more difficult, and you put somebody in place that's going to remove those regulations with stroke of a pen, then we're going to be much better off here.
Now, you were born in Utah, I believe, but when did you move to California? How long ago?
I was 21 years old.
Okay, so you're 58
it was
now.
38 years ago.
Yeah. I'm sure you've seen the dramatic change in the state in just those, those, not just those 4 decades, but in those 4 decades, the dramatic change in living standards in the state.
It's the reason why I'm running for one of the reasons why I'm running for this election, because I came here from another state that did not have the same economic or personal opportunities. I came to California because everyone knew that California did. If you came to California and you worked your butt off, you were going to succeed and you were going to find and achieve that California dream. And I did it. And while I was doing that, I was unfortunately so concentrating on me and my family and my work, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on around me in state government, in local government. And those people were not interested in the California dream. They were not interested in keeping us basically having an affordable way of living here in California. And now we're suffering all those consequences of decades long of bad government economic policy. And I'm doing this for the millions of Californians who do not have the same opportunity that I had when I was 21 years old. And we're going to reinstate it. We're going to get government out of the way. We are going to bring that availability of the California dream back to every Californian.
So one other policy question for you, your background obviously in crime, being a sheriff, what is your opinions of ICE and ICE being able to have detainers with illegal immigrants? Because California doesn't work with ICE in most parts. I don't think any part of the state really.
No,
maybe a few parts.
We have a sanctuary state policy. The truth of sanctuary state policy is the only people it protects are criminals, and we will eliminate it. We absolutely must eliminate sanctuary state policy because it makes every single one of us less safe. Our sheriffs, our prison wardens absolutely must cooperate with the federal government to eliminate criminals who are in our custody that are violating our freedoms, our rights, our safety. If you're here in the country illegally to begin with, which is wrong, and then you're going to violate our laws and end up in jail, you are going back to the place that you came from. And it certainly isn't back into our neighborhoods and into our communities. Sanctuary state is killing us, and we will absolutely work with the federal government to do everything we possibly can to get these criminals back to the countries that they belong and out of our streets, out of our businesses, out of our schools, out of the places where they're victimizing us because we are less safe.
So if you are elected governor, you'll be the first Republican governor since Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I know is a bad word in California Republican politics, but you'd be the first Republican since Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you'd have an immense Democratic legislature. How would you work with a Democratic legislature to get anything you want done? I mean, because some members of the legislature are very far left.
Yeah, education. And I will tell you, there's only a small handful that are very far left. Unfortunately, they're the ones running everything, and they're the ones in control. And as soon as they get exposed, we are going to vote them out. So the worst case scenario is they're only in there for 2 years. And I will spend every single day educating the public on who is going against the California dream, who is sabotaging us, our security, who is sabotaging my desire to eliminate state income tax, who is sabotaging my idea of the cheapest gas in the country, who is sabotaging my idea of actually being able to afford a starter home for a young couple. And the people who are purposely sabotaging it will be exposed, and they'll be eliminated in the next election. So the reality of government, the reality of where I am, I'm in a blue county. I'm a very conservative red sheriff, Republican sheriff, that I don't shy away from, but I also don't bring politics into my decisions. It's about being a community servant. It's about being a public servant, doing the job that I'm elected to do for every single person in my county. And as governor, I'm not working for Republicans. I'm not working for independents. I am going to work for Californians. I don't care about political party. We have to start making decisions for Californians, because right now Newsom and the Democrat Party only care about 40% of this state, and the 60% of the state are suffering. It's actually 90%, and it's just the brainwashed 20 that are controlled by 10 that are really running everything. And we just have to expose it. The best way to fix anything in government is shine light on it. And I'm going to be a beacon of light in that building, in that dark building in Sacramento. And we're going to show California how inefficient and how purposeful, destructive they have been over the last couple of decades.
So, and that's, you raise a very important point. If you look at voter registration, California has many more Democrats than it has Republicans. Obviously, it's a state that Kamala Harris won in the 2024 election, and Joe Biden won, and Hillary Clinton. What would be your pitch to voters who voted for Kamala Harris, who maybe, they may despise President Trump, they may be lifelong Democrats, but they also can see the writing on the wall? Gas is extremely expensive. It's very expensive to buy a home. The quality of life has declined. What would you say to those voters who have only voted for Democrats, and why they should vote for you?
Yeah, I'll be very honest and fair. I'm only speaking to the middle of the road Democrat, the moderate Democrats, who don't use emotion in every single decision that they make. The far left, I don't even want to try and reach, because we got to be really, really honest. Some of them are absolutely insane. They deny facts. They deny reason. There is no conversation with them. I'm talking to the moderate, middle of the road Democrats. We are all the same. Whether you're a moderate, middle of the road Republican or a moderate, middle of the road Democrat, we are all the same. And we had a loud voice in California in 2024 when we voted for Prop 36 to drastically change public safety in California to make us more safe. 3/4 of the state voted differently than what our governor and our legislature are doing. And they're defying us. They're giving us the middle finger, saying, we don't care what you want. I want all of those people to vote for common sense and reason for me to get into that office to do everything for all of us. I'm not going to make decisions for Republicans, Democrats, independents, or anything else. I'm making decisions for Californians. We have to realize, especially the people who just vote party, if you only vote party, you are kind of the problem. Let's start voting for character. Let's start for integrity, honesty, leadership ability, and vote for the person that you know or believe is going to do something for everyone. Because the problem is, we have to look back and say, our vote for Democrat for the last 20 years, where has it gotten us? That is what has put us in this position. And every single Democrat that has been on those debate stages with me is guaranteeing that we either stay the same or we get worse, because they're doubling down on the same policies that are increasing the cost of living, that are increasing the cost of gas, that are increasing the cost of homes, that are forcing businesses out of California. You have to vote for something different if you want something different. And I'm offering you that middle of the road person that has spent 33 years working for the public, not caring who you vote for and not caring what political party you find yourself in.
Is that how you won as a Republican in a blue county, is talking about just those kinds of issues in that way?
That's exactly how I won. I won because it's kind of a little microcosm of California. Morale in Riverside County was in the dumps. Economically, we were failing our taxpayers. We were not doing everything we could to provide the best service to our residents. And it was very, very obvious. And I was the person standing up against the status quo saying, we should be doing different. And I know I can make it different. And it only took me one term. I wanted a long time to fix all the things that were wrong. And I did it in the first couple of years, so much so that the next election, I didn't even have to run. I just put my name on the ballot and I won with 60% of the vote because
wow.
I did everything that I said I was going to do and more. And I proved to people that this was about doing what is right, doing what government is supposed to do for the people that elected us. And I'm just asking for the same opportunity in the state of California, because there are 40 million people who are being really punished for living or choosing to have a business in California. And we've got to make this right.
So I have just a few more questions for you. I know your time is needed, but polls are showing this is a very tight race. Right now, you're in a statistical tie for third place. You need to be in second. Democrats are having, the Politico reported, Democrats are having a break glass moment because they're worried about you being in the top two. The DGA, the Democratic Governors Association, is actually campaigning on behalf of the other Republican, Steve Hilton, and sending out mailers and other campaign ads. What do you think that they have to worry about Chad Bianco as the Republican nominee that they don't have to worry about Steve Hilton?
Changing California.
Really?
California residents have to realize that I am not wanted by the establishment. Sacramento politics do not want me in Sacramento. The people who are benefiting from failed policies don't want me in Sacramento. The Democrat one-party rule does not want me on the November ballot because they know I'm going to win. Steve Hilton knows he has no chance of beating me in this election. He has no chance, zero chance of winning a statewide election, and the Democrats know that too. So much so, he spent his entire campaign fighting me, against me, negative smear campaign against me, to where his campaign is broke. So much so that now Democrats, because they don't want me in November, have now given him $1 million in the last week for his own campaign, because they know that I can't be there. These polls are fake. These polls are meant to manipulate you, to make you believe, oh my gosh, everybody's voting for someone other than Chad. And I want to remind you this, the same people, the same polls that are telling you that Steve Hilton and Xavier Becerra are ahead are the same polls in 2016 that said that Hillary Clinton had a 10-point lead 1 week before the election. They don't want you to vote your conscience. They want you to vote with the status quo. They want you to believe that you have to, oh my gosh, Chad's number 3. We can't vote for him. We got to vote for Steve. That's what they want. And we're not going to fall for it again. We're going to be the number 1 vote getter, and we're going to win in November.
Well, the polls are all based on modeling. So, and right now there's been over 750,000 votes already cast because it's a universal mail-in ballot state, and Republican turnout has been excellent. I mean, so far it has been phenomenal. So the polls won't be accurate if they exceed expectations of what the models are. So I tell voters all the time, like, they're based on models. If you break those projections because you go to vote, those models are kind of useless. What are some policy differences between you and Steve Hilton, though?
I think you have to go to beliefs, because I came out very early in February with all of my policies, and then Steve Hilton came out in April or May and repeated all of them. I will tell you that Steve has changed. If you go back and watch Steve's entire campaign, he has changed his initial campaign to just mimicking mine over the last 13 months. He says every single thing that I say. He changed his stance on homelessness. He changed his stance on drug and alcohol rehab. He changed his stance on oil. He changed his stance on being oil independent. He changed his stance on regulation to where now he changed his stance on water, because I was popular with what I was telling everyone I was going to do. The thing with Steve is Steve has no ability to lead people. He never has. He's proven that he can't in his past. I can lead people to get things done. The difference in policy is that I know what I'm going to be capable of doing, or I wouldn't promise it. Steve knows he can't deliver, so he promises less. I'm promising California no state income tax by the time I leave that office in Sacramento. And Steve knows he could never deliver that, so he's gone and said less than 100,000. It's a small, tiny little thing that isn't going to help. It's going to help hardly anyone. You still can't afford a house in California if you make 100,000, so it's not helping. We need a leader. We need a
Right.
proven leader, and we need someone with integrity, not someone that changed their entire beliefs to be, as a populist, really, to take advantage of a situation in California where we want something different. Because his entire beliefs, 5 years ago, he was telling everyone he wasn't a Republican, and now he wants you to believe that he's Trump's best friend.
Well, I have to ask you a question that's come up to me. I talked to a lot of people from California about the campaign, a lot of Republicans about questions to ask you. And something that was brought up a couple of times was during the BLM riots, you did do a kneel. Why did you do it? And is it something you regret now?
I don't regret it for one single bit, because what I did is I kneeled to pray with protesters. And then 30 minutes later, we overwhelmingly used force to eliminate the rioters. The first law enforcement agency in the entire country.
That was a kneel. That was a kneel in prayer you were doing?
Everyone knows we kneeled in prayer.
Oh, okay. It's definitely been misrepresented a lot.
Oh, it's been purposely misrepresented by Steve Hilton to make everyone believe that I'm something that I'm not. I am the law and order guy, the zero tolerance for crime in Riverside County, the zero tolerance for doing anything wrong in Riverside County, and everyone here knows it. I am one of the nation leaders, one of the most respected nationwide leaders of law enforcement. Explain to me how any of that is possible if I knelt to BLM, who's a domestic terrorist organization that hates cops. I had 1,200 cops right here with me. They know exactly what happened. They don't care what Steve Hilton wants.
I feel embarrassed. I fell for the lie.
That's okay.
Okay, last policy question, and then I want to hear your closing thing. Last policy question: where do you stand on expanding data centers in California?
Yeah, so data centers, there is a massive, massive amount of misinformation into data centers. And I got to be very honest and say, I'm still diving into both sides of this. I can tell you that I do know that there is the majority of the misinformation that's being spread is spread by China, because China does not want us leading in AI. And the only way we're going to lead in AI is if we have data centers. So they're trying to stop the initiation and the building of data centers so they can control the AI, basically world, the world environment around AI. So it's tons of misinformation. We must have data centers if we're going to have the technology that we have, if we're going to make better technology, and if we're going to be able to utilize and get the benefits from AI. We've got to have the data centers, and the lies have to stop. The propaganda has to stop. We have to be honest with what they are, what they do, what their impact is, what their benefit is, and then we move from there. I will tell you this. California has made it almost non-existent for us to get big data centers, because no business is going to operate in California, particularly a business that revolves around such an expense. When you have $100 billion worth of equipment in a building that the state of California is taxing you on that every single year to the tune of $40 million, $400 million, you're not going to do business in the state of California. So California is going to miss out on the opportunity for economic advancement, just like we did with the tech industry in the Silicon Valley. The same thing could happen with AI, and we're going to miss out on it if we believe the lies, if we believe the manipulation, and if we don't take advantage of it. I'm not saying we have to have massive data centers. I'm saying we can't get left behind and then be behind the 8 ball trying to figure out how we're going to catch up.
Do you have some sympathies to people who have anxieties about that, though?
I do, but I only have sympathy if they're listening to their social media thread, and if they're listening to a headline in a newspaper. Because if we can't get to the point where we all realize that we're being psychologically manipulated because we're too lazy to look into something, then that's where we mess up. And that's what I want everybody. We've got to get back to looking up things for ourselves and talking about them. We just have to have dialogue back and forth so we can all figure out everybody's side on these issues, and then we can come up with what's true and what's not. And I think that unfortunately we're being misled on both sides. The people that want the data centers here and they want them now are promising things they probably can't deliver. And the people that don't want them are acting like it's going to destroy the world, the environment, and the place that they live. And neither one of those are true. The truth is always in the middle, but we can't get to the middle if we don't have the dialogue to get there.
Okay, Chad Bianco, where can people go to read more about you? How can they? What's your closing message to voters, and how can they go vote? Most importantly, because votes count and signs and ads don't.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to vote right now. Everybody got their ballot in the mail. It's sitting on your kitchen counter. You have to fill it out. You have to turn it back in. If you've already thrown it away without voting, show up on election day, get a provisional ballot and vote. I can't blame Democrats for what happened in California. I blame the Republicans who don't vote. We have to take advantage of this situation that we're in. We have to stand up and vote. We have to voice our opinions, and you do it through the election process. You can find more information about me at biancoforgovernor.com. All of my social media platforms is Sheriff Chad Bianco. It's super important that we get out and vote. And I will tell you this. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. You've all watched the last 4 debates. The only person on that stage that represents a change, a positive change for California with a lower cost of living, lower gas, lower building, affordable housing, all of those things, there's only one person on that stage that represents proof of concept and a lifetime of doing that for people, and that's me. So I would appreciate your vote, appreciate your support, and together we're going to save our beautiful state.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now it's time for the Ask Me Anything segment. If you want to be part of the Ask Me Anything segment, email me Ryan@numbersgamepodcast.com. That's Ryan at plural numbers gamepodcast.com. This question comes from Brian Fox. He says, in 2032, and the recent census data confirms what you've been predicting, migration has strengthened red states while weakening blue states, emboldening their gains. Red states yearn for an Article 5 constitutional convention. Lacking the necessary number of legislatures to call for the convention on their own, red states must secure institutional buy-in from blue and purple states, ensuring all parties have a vested interest in the final amendment. In this scenario, what a win-win amendments might states agree on? Would it include a flexible balanced budget, a congressional term limits, single subject legislation? That is a great question. Okay, so first of all, in 2017 was when Republicans had the best chance of having a constitutional convention. At the time, Republicans had complete control over 32 state legislatures. Democrats only had 12, and Republicans also had a couple of other legislatures they had like half control of. Like I think in Connecticut, they had the state house. In New York, they had the state senate. In Washington state, they had the state senate. And so it was pretty, I mean, they were pretty close to having enough votes to have a constitutional convention of their own. But the thing is it goes back to the whole let's end the filibuster conversation with the U.S. Senate. What do enough people agree on to pass? And when you open to a constitutional convention, really anything can happen. So blue states could demand changes to the Second Amendment. They could change things on campaign finance laws. There's a lot that could go awry, and I don't think there is enough trust really for the states to go along together where they were going to support a constitutional convention. I don't know. I don't think they would pass a balanced budget amendment. I don't think Democrats care that much. Single line legislation, it's a very popular idea. I don't think they care that much. Maybe term limits, maybe, but a lot of states don't have term limits themselves. Like New York State doesn't have term limits on their legislature. So I know there was Pennsylvania and a couple other ones. So I don't know. I don't think there's anything they would get together with and actually agree on. But it's an interesting concept and question. I think you need a situation that Republicans control 35 state legislatures for that to really happen. Okay. Last question for the podcast comes from Praj. Praj says, thanks for taking my question again. It is an honor. I was analyzing the 2016 Florida election results. Rubio performed almost 6 points better than Trump. I assume it's due to the popularity with Hispanics. Even then, why wouldn't it be better for the Republicans to nominate Rubio in 2028, who is obviously best of all three coalition Republicans need? Trump's base being Secretary of State, Hispanics, and holding the suburban vote. That probably means easily holding Nevada, Arizona, and making plays into New Mexico, New Hampshire, and more than 50% chance of holding Georgia. Also, token Republicans like even Asa Hutchinson, a random reference that I appreciate, but he was a governor of Arkansas that kind of no one remembers. Would be better than a Democrat, but I want DeSantis over Rubio and Vance. I know he's getting a bad rap these days, but I love DeSantis because he actually made life better when I moved from New York City to Florida during COVID and due to being a great executive. I first of all, thank you for sending me a question. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I love DeSantis as governor. I've asked him to come on this podcast a couple times. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. I think he'll be an amazing president, but you need to campaign successfully to win presidency. And I think that his last campaign was pretty rough. And I don't know if he's learned any lessons necessary to be president. As far as what Rubio brings to the table, Latinos are not uniform throughout the country. Puerto Ricans are not Cubans. Mexicans are not Venezuelans. El Salvadorians are not Guatemalans. They do have very different voting habits. Now, they all basically trended to the right during the Trump presidency because the economy was so bad and inflation was so bad under Biden. However, I don't think that Rubio being on the ballot is going to influence more than the Cuban and maybe Venezuelan diaspora that live in the United States. I don't think that it will be enough to convince Mexicans or like Central Americans because he's Latino. I don't think the Latino vote is uniform for that reason. Same reason, like if an East Asian was like a Chinese person was running for president, I don't think it would convince Indians to vote for them necessarily because they're both from Asia, the continent. It doesn't work like that. Yeah, so that's my big crux of it. I think that Rubio is a very capable candidate, very capable politician. He was also an incumbent in 2016, which Trump was not. So that played into it. And I think there's a lot Rubio offers. However, I would have to hear a lot more from Rubio. I read Rubio's last book, and it was about foreign policy, and I like a lot of it. However, there was a big tell in it, and the tell was this. He talked about foreign policy mistakes of the last 20 years America has made. Now, when I say what's the big foreign policy mistake in the last 20 years, your brain's going to go to either Afghanistan or Iraq, right? 9 times out of 10, it's going to go to Afghanistan or Iraq. He doesn't mention either Afghanistan or Iraq. Like, if my memory serves me correct, I don't think he mentioned them at all. He kind of had a passing comment, and that was it. It was mostly on China and Russia. And that concerns me. That concerns me that he really didn't take a lot of lessons the correct way. I think he's great on working families issues. I think that he's moved a lot on immigration. I still have a lot of concerns about him, though. I like a lot of what Rubio has to offer. I'm just not sold on him. And I don't necessarily know if there's a large portion of the country that would vote for Rubio but not Vance. I know there are people online who say it, but the internet's not real. Just remember that. To paraphrase Fran Lebowitz, the internet, like algebra, is not real. Anyway, thank you guys for listening to this podcast. I hope you like that interview. Happy Monday, everyone. Take care of yourselves. If you like this podcast, please like and subscribe on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, where you get this podcast, and on YouTube. Press subscribe on YouTube. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday.